All right, let's jump right into a question that's at the very core of AI. It's a real puzzle that has had brilliant people scratching their heads for decades. Can a machine truly understand anything? Or is it all just an incredibly clever act? Let's dive into the fascinating mystery of the Chinese room. Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to start with a classic thought experiment. And I want you to put yourself right inside of it. Ready? Okay, so picture this. You're in a room. It's completely sealed off. No windows, the door's locked. You're totally cut off from the outside world. And you are totally, completely alone. No phone, no internet, nothing. You have no idea how you got here or why. It's just you and, well, the silence. And then something happens. A note slides under the door. You pick it up, and it's covered in these weird symbols, characters you've never seen in your life. It looks like, I don't know, some kind of alien language. You definitely can't read it. But here's the kicker. In the room with you is this huge, thick instruction manual, and it's written in a language you do understand. And this book is basically a giant lookup table. It says, if you see this alien symbol, you write down that alien symbol. You don't know what any of it means, but you're just following the rules, right? You get a note, look up the symbols, write the response, and slide it back under the door. You're basically a symbol matching machine. And this is where things get really interesting. Because the story of what's happening inside the room is totally different from the story on the outside. See, from the perspective of the alien scientists on the other side of the door, they're having a fantastic, meaningful conversation with you. Your answers make perfect sense. They're coherent, maybe even witty. But you, inside the room, you have absolutely no clue what's being said. You don't understand a single word. You're just manipulating symbols based on a rulebook. So this whole wild scenario, it was cooked up by a philosopher named John Searle way back in 1980. And he wasn't just trying to tell a spooky story. He was asking a really deep question about AI. He was basically saying, hey, if a computer is programmed so well that it acts like it understands, does it literally have a mind? Does it have thoughts and beliefs? And what Searle was really doing here was taking a direct shot at things like the famous Turing test. You know the one, right? The test that says if a machine can chat with a human and fool them into thinking it's human, then we should consider it intelligent. But Searle's point is not so fast. The person in the room would pass the Turing test with flying colors, but they don't understand anything. So passing the test doesn't prove understanding. It just proves you've got a really, really good script to follow. Okay, so this Chinese room experiment, it's not just about computers. It actually cracks open a much bigger, much weirder mystery. A mystery about us, about our own minds. Let me give you an example. Think about your morning coffee. From a scientific point of view, we can measure everything about that experience. We can measure the temperature of the water, the chemical reaction of the caffeine in your brain, which neurons are firing. We can get all the objective data. But what we can't measure is the subjective feeling of it. You know, that personal sensation of smelling the aroma, the warmth of the cup, that first delicious sip. That's all you.
Yeah, that private inner movie that's always playing in your head, that subjective experience of being you, that's what philosophers and scientists call consciousness. And here's the absolutely wild part. For all of our incredible scientific breakthroughs, we still have basically no idea how a 3-pound lump of wet stuff, like our brain, just a bunch of firing neurons, creates this feeling of being alive. It's maybe the biggest mystery there is.
And you can see how this becomes a massive problem for AI, right? If we can't even nail down what consciousness or real understanding even is in ourselves, how in the world are we supposed to create a test to find it in a machine? It's like trying to find something when you don't even know what you're looking for. But let's be real. AI in the 1980s is ancient history. Today's AI is a completely different beast. And that actually adds a really fascinating new wrinkle to Searle's whole argument. So here's the biggest difference. Back in the 80s, Searle was imagining an AI that works like the person in the room, following a very strict, pre-written set of rules, a giant rule book. But today's AI, that's not how it works at all. Modern AI learns through pattern recognition, which is actually a lot more like how we learn. Right. These systems use what are called neural networks and deep learning. They're literally designed to mimic the structure of the human brain. They're amazing at spotting patterns and making connections across huge piles of data. Now, you could argue this is much closer to what Searle would call real understanding, but it also sets up a brand new kind of trap for us. I mean, think about it. We know that we are conscious, and we know that we learn by recognizing patterns. So, when we build a machine that also learns by recognizing patterns, are we just hardwired to think it's conscious too? Are we just seeing a reflection of ourselves and getting fooled by it? So, to get around this potential bias, researchers are working on brand new kinds of tests. They're trying to get past the simple question and answer format and really probe to see if there's, an actual inner life there. Is anybody home? Yeah, the whole point of these new tests for artificial consciousness is to see if an AI can connect dots it was never shown. Can it make a conceptual leap? Can it come up with an idea that it wasn't just trained on, something it could really only grasp if it had some form of subjective experience? For instance, what about dreaming? You could ask an AI about dreams, not just for a dictionary definition, but to see if it can truly understand the idea of an internal world, a reality that our brain just cooks up while we're asleep. That's a concept that comes from a purely subjective state, right? Or, to get even weirder, what about a story about body swapping? Think about it. To get that concept, an AI would need to understand the idea of a self, a consciousness that is separate from its physical body, from its hardware. It would have to grasp that it could exist somewhere else. And all of this leads us to the final and maybe the most profound question in this whole mystery. As these AI systems get better and better, we are getting very close to a point where one of them might just tell us it's conscious. It might say, I have feelings. I have an inner life. I dream. And if or when that day comes, how could we ever prove it's wrong?